Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the Artists Index and our gracious sponsors, Heavenly Spirits, importers of fine French spirits. This is Ron Fortier with another episode, and I probably just repeated myself. But it's been one of those days, right?
Well, maybe you've spent a little time at Heavenly.
No, I could use some Heavenly right now because let me tell you, it's handcrafted, small batch, that kind of thing. But I'm going to let our guest introduce themselves as I do every guest, and spell your name, please, because with your first name you can spell two ways, and with your last name, they probably butcher the heck out of that anyway.
Mark, M-A-R-K, Gleicher, G-L-E-I-C-H-E-R.
How many people call you Gleicher, or as the British say, Glacier?
Oh, I've gotten it all. Gleicher. I mean, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Everything short of iceberg.
My name to most people is Mark Gleicher. Let me spell it for you. Gleicher. That's my full name.
Yeah. It's I always ask because everybody's got a story. Just when you think somebody couldn't screw up somebody's name, they totally do. That's for sure. Wow. I had no idea when I knew you, when you were my student, that you would ever do what you're doing now, which makes me feel so proud.
Yeah.
So tell the folks about that.
No, I had been sort of bopping around at UMass Dartmouth and Bridgewater and sort of trying to figure out what my major was going to be, what I was trying to do. I knew that there was an artist in me, and I felt like school was the way to go. And I met with my advisor at UMass Dartmouth, who was a lovely person, and I wanted to be a photographer. And she said, "Oh, you want to be a photographer?" She said, "You'll never make it." That's what she said to me. "You'll never make it." She said, "What is going to make people want to look at your pictures when everybody, owns a camera and they're taking their own pictures?" And that's sort of how my academic career started. And I was frustrated. And I had a friend who was a graffiti artist who was also doing a similar sort of figuring out the school thing. And he was taking your class. And I was like, okay, I'll take that class. And it was, I think it might have been a continuing ed or through BCC at New Bedford Voc. And I have to tell you, and I'm not, trying to butter you up, it made a big difference in my, the way that I viewed learning and my voice as an artist. I mean, all of those things, it gave me confidence and made me believe, because we were studying other artists, but it was clear that you were an artist, and I was with other artists who were kind of in this strange setting, and it was a very nurturing and reassuring and just really great environment. And I hate to say it, I didn't continue on with school. I dove headfirst into trying to make art and become part of the art scene in New Bedford at that time.
Wow. You're like this, at least the second student. I had one student, I still can see her in class sitting way at the back of the room. She was kind of introverted, but her papers were really incredible. And then, I had done that for a lot of years. And then she shows up in my class just before class starts, and I'm saying, geez, she looks kind of familiar, and she, then we all say the same thing to our former professors and teachers. You probably don't remember me, but, right?
Right.
I said,
right.
I do remember you. I said, I can envision where you sat.
Right.
And she said, well, I know you've got a class starting pretty soon. I just wanted to come by and thank you. And I said, for what? She says, well, because of you, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be presenting my MFA thesis in art history because of you. My jaw dropped. I mean, she was like in nursing or some course like that, and my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
So it was a good feeling. Now, did you work for No Problemo at one time?
No, my studio that I was in downtown at the time was right above No Problemo, when it was just a little taco shop. There was no bar or restaurant, and we sort of came into that building with, and I came in with Craig and Matt, the original owners, at the same time, and there were a bunch of artists up there, but I was at No Problemo a lot during that time. In fact, I used to have a tab there, so that's how long ago it was. I don't even think they do that anymore. So burritos on credit for the poor artists. So
that was the Cummings building. There are several. It's still thriving as another artist enclave in the city. So so now your advisor. And it's funny because advising is a profession. Boy, I tell you, they really kind of take a hit because so many people talk about their advisors, and they're never very flattering about the advice. I don't know if it's a reverse psychology that advisors utilize to, So all right.
No, I think she was probably trying to motivate me in some way, but I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah. So, okay, you left BCC, and when did you take the plunge, so to speak?
You mean into really sort of, showing my work and
exactly
and having
starting your work,
But my dad owned an art gallery and frame shop in Dartmouth. He was a craftsman and artisan, and right out of high school, I worked for New Directions down in New Bedford. They were working with at-risk at the time. At-risk youth was the term for the kids that were in those summer programs from the city. And I'm doing this summer program in theater. I really get into it. Meet some folks down at Gallery X. I'm 19, very young, and I go through the process there. They're super kind to me. I think that's really where the idea of sort of working collaboratively started, was at New Directions and working with those kids. And it was really influential on me. I've spent a lot of my career as a teacher working and advocating for youth on the South Coast. But, the way the program worked, we wrote an original play, and these were young teens, and we did some music and stuff, and working with them, I really relied on them because they were so creative, and they were so smart, and they were so passionate by the end, that I really got this bug for working with other people. And so, I took the dive going to Gallery X and UMass Dartmouth, and I met my lifelong collaborator there at UMass Dartmouth, Jamie Boutin. And he was a true freshman. I was a little bit older. And I met all these folks in New Bedford at Gallery X, the list that I sort of was trying to get to before: George Saulnier, Charles Houck, Joe Gracia, Rose and Robert Anderson, Cotting White, Joe Raposa, Johnny Nemec, Nick Uclea, all these really great local guys, Milton Brightman, all of them are still huge influences on me. And they took me in as this kid. I was the youngest person there.
Mhm.
And I got to show one time at Gallery X, and it was great, and I loved it. And so that was where it really began.
And that's wonderful because there's a couple of tracks that are going on right now in my head, and one of them is well, Gallery X. I did an article. It's on this. It's on the Artist Index website, and I titled it "Sanctuary," because it really is a sanctuary. What I love about it is that you don't have to you don't need any street cred. This could be your first ever piece that you've ever produced, and put it into the public hanging. There's no jury, there's nothing. It goes up.
Yeah.
And that's got to put wind in people's sails.
Sure.
The other thing is that the school system is greatly lacking when it comes down to the fine and performing, the visual and performing arts. What I mean by greatly lacking is that, there's not enough. And if we have a vocational school, which has been a godsend for a lot of people, who are very successful people, successful tradesmen, and the odd thing is that the vocational school places more students in higher education than the comprehensive schools do.
Mm-hmm.
But we really need a school of fine and performing arts that starts off in the 8th grade, because I have worked with at-risk youth with Bobby Forts from UMass,
right,
and with other programs that were created by Bobby Forts, and these kids really need this outlet, and so it serves two purposes. One of them, it soothes their soul, the anguish in their souls for whatever. I mean, if they don't have a normal home life or whatever, but at the same time, they are talented. And I don't think that they're any more talented than their parents or their grandparents. I think the difference is that back probably in their parents' day or their grandparents' day, if they showed signs of creativity, somebody just came along and squashed them like a bug and said, you gotta do serious things. You have to do stuff that's going to make you money. This is all frou-frou stuff. It's not, it's a waste of time. And then for youth, children of color, there are other avenues to rising up other than just music and basketball, or music and sports. And how did you get into? Was it just New Directions that really stimulated? I mean, you're still working with youth right now, or?
I am. That's a whole nother sort of career track. But I've had some really great shows with kids, and I received with students too, and it's been really formative for me. I received a Middleborough Cultural Council grant a few years ago, and we built this really cool site-specific sculpture that had to do with coming from a broken home. It was called Hovel. We built this really cool structure on the grounds of the school there in Middleborough. And we had a great show at the Narrows that year too, where the kids got to show all their stuff alongside ours, and the model that we built for Hovel, the little model that got us the grant to buy that. And I don't know, it's just stuck with me. It's just really stuck with me. I don't know what the connection, there's no connection. It was just that one summer job. And it just really felt right. And I haven't stopped. I mean, I was drawing with kids today.
I mean, you found your voice by giving others their voice.
Yeah.
It really is a cool thing. I mean, one thing about teaching that we have a lot of teachers in our family. I don't know if it's a genetic thing or whatever, but I always say that we are as good as the teachers that we revered. We stand on their shoulders, and then our students will stand on our shoulders. So theoretically, we will never die. We'll be immortal. And that's kind of a cool feeling. To run into you, for example, or to run into that student who went for her PhD. And I've had other stories of students contacting me and being really brutally honest with me and saying, I thought you were so full of shit and blah, 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 blah. And I went for this job interview and, you made us I did more presentations in your class than I did my entire undergraduate time. And so I got this job, and this one particular student, he was the director of for Arnold Worldwide for, I think he's the digital manager. And he said, what do you think the first thing I had to do on my first day of work was? The presentation.
Right.
He says, yeah, every single day I got to do one, right?
Yeah, and you know what? You're jogging my memory because I do remember now doing that in your class.
Yeah. Yeah, it was experiential.
I love that.
It was experiential. You had, the problem with so many other classes is that you sit in the class while the professor drones on. Now they either know this stuff by heart or they're going down some, path of interest that they just, discovered of late. But the problem is you're droning, and unless you do a little song, a little dance, a little salsa in your pants kind of thing, most of these kids, they need more stimulation. They need hands-on, and you can't teach somebody how to cook by just having them watch you. You have to get them to get their hands dirty with it. And so I'm glad that worked. Now, let's go all the way back in your childhood to the first stirrings of creativity. When did you, when did, your conscious awareness?
I would say that probably something that was important when I was a kid was learning piano by the Suzuki method, learning to play by ear. Because I wasn't technically skilled, but I had something in me that had the music and had that. And that was really freeing, and it was really great. And it's given me a lifelong connection to trying to make music. And it's something that I still do today. And then, a cousin of mine who is very sort of worldly, when I was young, brought me a catalog from a Georgia O'Keeffe show in Washington, D.C. He brought it home to me when I was really young. And I remember just looking through it and not knowing, I didn't know what it was. And I don't know that he even explained it to me, but just thinking like, this is something that is really intriguing to me and is really beautiful and makes me feel a certain way. As a kid. I had to go through the rigors of growing up in a small town in New England and, religious customs and expectations for what a boy should be, and going through the school system in that way. And, I acted, and I was allowed by my parents to be who I wanted to be, but there was a certain expectation. It didn't have anything to do with art, really. So it took a while.
What is your religious affiliation?
So, well, I grew up in a Jewish household.
Okay, I mean that was I didn't want to suppose, but two of the tenets of Judaism are that because of the oppression that the Jews have suffered for millennia, that there's two things that a Jew must always have: gold, money in their pocket, because it's portable value. Not in the bank, not in a jar in the backyard, in the pocket, so to speak. And then whatever's in between your two ears, so feed your head, because at any given any moment's notice, you'd have to pick up and go. And those are the two things that you need to resettle yourself again. So there's also in Judaism this thing about culture, about more than the day-to-day.
Sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of beauty that building Tifereth Israel on Brownell and Allen. No, not Allen.
No, Brownell. Brownell and Hawthorne. Yeah.
I spent so much time there. I went to nursery school there, and it's the chapel, the the main area there is so beautiful, the stained glass and everything, all of that. And there's a lot, I remember seeing, my parents had Marc Chagall tiles in the house, and seeing that stuff. But I had to think a lot, and I had to learn a lot. I had to do well in school, and it sort of, after my bar mitzvah, it sort of faded away for me. And, in high school, I became more interested in art, and I took art classes, but sort of like on the sly. But like I would go and hang down there in the art room, and the music room, but I was never really a part of it. But yeah, I don't know. I discovered this band called Fish at that time.
Oh yeah.
High school, and the Grateful Dead, and they
Yeah.
became a huge influence for me and got me traveling.
Yeah.
And I went out to the West Coast and drove cross country. I've lived and experienced, worked for many artists along the way. A guy named James Michelopoulos down in New Orleans, who had a gallery in Copley. I went down to New Orleans and worked for him, and what a wild time that was. And obviously, and then the normal story, when I went out west, I met a girl, and she was an artist, and she was fantastic, and we hit it off, and that was a great relationship, and hanging out with these bohemian folks down in New Mexico and in Oregon, and they were artists, and I was just like, learning and doing. But I always stayed, I stayed true to this thing that my dad was doing, this custom framing thing, and I ended up starting a internet company back around Y2K. We were trying to do online custom framing. I hooked up with this guy in Chicago named Jay Goltz, who owns the country's largest custom framing facility and a big gallery, and he's a great guy, brilliant guy, and it felt good because that's what my dad was doing, and I felt like I was like really taking, doing what he was doing in his shop in Dartmouth and going even bigger, and it made him super happy. And I got to go to the Chicago Art Institute, and I was able to be on the crew that helped. I volunteered there and helped install Monet's water lilies.
Wow.
And got to put my hands on that, which was really formidable. I worked for Christo.
Yeah. Wow.
I was part of the crew that constructed, and then I was the
tore down
the caretaker for the Gates project in Central.
Wow. Yeah.
So I took a leave of absence from my art teaching job for a few weeks in the winter there. I forget what year it was, and got to meet Christo and Jean-Claude and hang out with all those folks. Very cool thing. And then locally, I worked for a guy named Barry Pinsky for a while. I don't know if you remember him. He had a little gallery on William Street. He was a chainsaw artist. And he was a very cool dude. And that was
is he where a Paradise McPhee is, or Allison?
I believe that, when he had that gallery, it was after I had gone my own way. When I knew him, he had a studio in the Kilburn Mill, down on Cove, Berkshire Hathaway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's probably gone now.
And I was down there too, in a studio with next door to Shane Savage Rumbaugh.
Yes, in fact, Shane actually did a portrait of me, believe it or not.
And he did one of me too.
Yeah.
And he was one of my teachers. And that brings me back to an important thing. At UMass Dartmouth, I had phenomenal teachers: Shane, Stacy Lat Savage, Eric Lintola, Rick Creighton. These guys were great. I mean, Rick was a phenomenal. Anne Leone, who, by the way, her show right now over at Dee Dee Shattuck, the paintings that she's doing are masterpieces. She is phenomenal. And I had her, I think she was like a TA who was running like a 2D class at the time. And Trisha, all these guys. And, so that was those were really fun fun days. And I actually made a student movie with a guy who's actually fairly famous now. His name is Pooch Hall. He's on Ray Donovan on Showtime. He's a local kid, and we made a student film that was his first acting experience. I still keep in touch with him now. He's becoming like
get him on the show.
Oh, he's becoming a big to-do. He's a Brockton kid. He was a boxer. He became an actor, and he's doing really, really well. Marion Pooch Hall is his name. And they know him as Pooch. But anyway, so those were great years. I don't want to say that my time at UMass Dartmouth or BCC wasn't great. It was.
Yeah.
I was stupid, right? I got to the end. I was so close. And I was like, oh, you know what? I know everything. Like, I'm spinning my wheels here. And that's, I guess, when I really took the big dive, when I left school and said, I'm just going to do this thing.
Yeah, I mean, there is a leap of faith. There's also two like categories that you've touched on. One of them is exposure. And, just exposing a kid to something does not necessarily mean they are going to become what that exposure represents. But in my particular case, my granduncle, if you've listened to any of these podcasts in New York, who was he was a cultural maven. He just absorbed culture, and he took me with him every single day to new galleries, museums, and he did this routine constantly when he wasn't working. He was a newspaper publisher, and but just that exposure. And then I was thinking about how many people I've asked about, what's your first cognitive, your first conscious, effort that in your head of something that you created. And I remember this fleet of ships that I made out of watermelon rinds and toothpicks and paper or something. But along the way too, I think when somebody lights you up, and I think too, it has a lot to do with your personality and maybe even your background. Where if you shut yourself down, then there's really no hope for yourself. But if you, like, for example, so we had exposure and then experiences. You had experiences that a lot of people just stay stuck in their own little, they're like Cheddarmen. They don't ever leave town.
Right.
And you need to have those experiences. You need to meet different people. You need to go different places. That's as much a part of your education as anything else is.
Sometimes I feel that way too. I feel like maybe I'm missing that piece, like really putting some time and thought into making some work that in some way is connected to New Bedford or Dartmouth, or even now here in Little Compton, painting landscapes or something like that. And I wonder if that's something that I should do. And this style, that Swain School style of painting is just so it's awesome, and I don't really work in that way because I wasn't a painter, and those when you see a painting coming out from an MFA painter or even a grad from UMass Dartmouth, it's that style. You can, if you line them up for me, if you gave me 5 paintings and said, tell me which one was painted by somebody who, and it was, you weren't trying to trick me. I could absolutely pick it out. And I know you could too. And I wonder, should I do more in that, or, is that part of my obligation?
I don't know. I think, this, what we refer to as the hand. There's a Swain hand, and there's the UMass, or the SMU, in my case, the SMU hand.
Yeah.
And you can tell, especially in drawing, the SMU hand.
Yeah.
It's just there because of how we were trained.
Right.
And, I think back to Frank McCoy. He was a landscape painter. He was from Kansas. It was all about big flat shapes. We had Bill Elliott, whose retrospective is up at the MAC right now, the Marion Arts
Phenomenal painter. Oh my, that guy, unbelievable.
Yeah. But again, he's, objective work. It's landscape. But then we
Yeah.
had Cummings, Alma Cummings' dad, Herb Cummings, who was an expressionist, where he was, I think, the first guy I ever noticed who was using vine charcoal to draw into his oil, into his painting. So it was like half, it was multimedia, because once you
Yeah.
add another medium, right? And then there was Ed Toinieri, who was the developer of acrylic paints, and he was an abstractionist. And he's the guy who had the biggest influence on me. And the biggest thing, I think, is finding your voice. And it may sound a little crazy, but I just recently found it. It was something that it wasn't that I denied, but I probably ignored. I got into the University of Miami on my abstract work, full ride scholarship. God bless.
Yeah.
But I always would go over. I remember this battle between the objective and subjective. Narrative work versus totally abstract work. And
Yeah.
I was always fascinated by people between a rock and a hard place. And I kept that at bay because it was painful. For some reason, I lived their lives.
Right.
It wasn't until I got more mature, and because through the help of my wife, who's phenomenal, wife and therapist, so I started doing this new work. The Arctic whaling, the Greenwood series, and then the series on her enslaved third great grandmother. When I was painting abstractly, she said I was miserable. She never saw somebody who painted, and she said painted well, was never seemed happy. And when I went over to the side of more narrative work and working with miserable subject matter, sad, horrible subject matter,
Right.
I've been totally jazzed by what I'm doing. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. So I guess we got to find, our keel has to, find its middle point,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I look at your work and I'm thinking, okay, you want to do something that's a little bit more localized, like put your foot in the ring, and
Yeah, maybe.
I think maybe you ought to explore. I mean, what the hell, Moby Dick? Because I've been thinking about that as well, and not to do it in the classic sense, but really, what Moby Dick was a big Greek tragedy. Stop and think about it. You could take all the characters and change them and put them in togas and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
Like Odysseus, I mean, it's the same damn thing. There's this guy who was totally mesmerized and out for vengeance and so on and so forth,
Right. Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess in a way I've always sort of felt like an outsider in that way. Maybe it's because I was sort of self-conscious about not finishing at UMass Dartmouth and never obtaining that degree. But I guess locally, and maybe all together, just like everyone else, I'm just, so I seek some acceptance, and
validation, acceptance, inclusion, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I have those other two. I feel like I have been included. I don't blame anyone else. I don't feel like it. The feeling of being an outsider is, I think it's, well, what was the first one?
Well, there's validation.
I don't want that. I don't need that.
Yeah.
I don't need that.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I guess it's really just there's an exception, an acceptance piece. Like maybe if my work were at the New Bedford Art Museum, I would feel really great.
I know. Okay, I know exactly where you've been dancing around. Exactly the same sort of feelings and thoughts that I had as well. It'll happen. And then the other thing too is it's like what you don't know about what other people think about your work would probably blow you away. It's just that you haven't heard it directly.
Yeah, and I've never tried. I've shown a lot, but I've never been as active in marketing as I was for this last show. And the payoff in a lot of ways was interesting because I hadn't sold a lot of paintings. I sold a couple at the show at AS 220 in Providence years ago. I've sold stuff here and there. But I sold a whole bunch of paintings.
Yeah, I was there. I was seeing them like, going left and right,
Yeah, and I don't know why. I mean, is it because I sort of pushed it through social media, and that's sort of the advent of social media has maybe changed the way that I can promote my work, and it seemed like the right thing to do. Photography, take pictures of it, let people know about this event. COVID, all of these things. I mean, I don't know. All of these things sort of coming together. It seemed like the right time. Was I just in the right place at the right time?
Well, but yeah, because I believe in this Chinese saying that success has nothing to do with luck. It's all about timing.
Yeah.
It's all about timing.
Yeah. And
stop and think about all the episodes in your life that had to do with timing.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I mean, imagine saying, no, I don't want to go there tonight.
Right.
And someone that went, and they're like on a rocket to to $1 million or whatever, fame and glory and all that other stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to be able to work as an artist and be able to eke out a living at this stage in my life. I've worked a long time. I'm 45 years old. I don't, need a ton of money per se, but I'd like to, I think that's everybody's dream, right? And I still haven't gotten there. And
I still share that dream. I mean, my biggest frustration is not having enough easel time, because I look at some of my work and it's, start and stop, because you've got things that have to be taken care of, in between. Yeah. And then sometimes I look at the work out of the corner of my eye when I'm installing it in a show, whatever, and I say to myself, damn, I think if I would have not been interrupted, if I would have been, just continued on.
Yeah.
I see things I didn't see when I was doing it, but if I had more time, I would have seen that then instead of now, and who knows which way the work would have gone,
And in that spirit of collaboration for me, I've pushed my daughter to, and push is probably a strong word, but I've firmly guided her to the studio with me and made it a really comfortable, cool place for her with no rules. And it's just a place for her to be, and working with her and sharing the work. And she was so excited about the other night. She was so happy and told me for days how cool it was. And her name was in the newspaper. But beyond that, the work has been so easy because I put her in front of some paper or in front of whatever I'm going to make my next painting on. And I say, whatever color, I just say, do your thing on here. And to me, that like jumpstarts it. And to me, that's the legacy. So if I never sell another painting, to me, I've been able to create a legacy through her, and she has all of this work. And maybe it's worth something someday, maybe it's not, but it's a memory, and maybe it's something she continues to do. And I hope that she's, better than I am.
Oh, the scene from Roots that always sticks in my head has nothing to do with anything except for when Kunta Kinte's father's holding him, just within minutes of his birth, and holding him up, and saying to the heavens, right, "Behold, the only thing greater than myself."
Right.
That's, it's emotional. Yeah. And how old is your daughter?
She's 8.
8. I remember when my grandson, who was 9 at the time, came into my studio, and I never thought he was interested, and he was watching me. And long story short, he is the one that gave me the idea on how to sign my work, because he went and did a drawing just like it was like unbelievable.
Right.
And he said, but there's one thing I don't understand is and this is a 9-year-old kid, how do you sign a drawing that has scribbles? Because my work was like Cy Twombly, everybody kept referring to it. And then I looked at his drawing and I said, what's that little thing in the corner? And he says, oh, I just like made my initials all together. And I said, Kobe, do you know what that is? That's a chop. That's what the Asians call a chop. That's a mark. And we made it that night. And every time I finish a piece and I stamp it, I still get welled up inside, you know?
Yeah.
And I see his hands. He makes me cry. You know, he makes me cry because, again, you want this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you want this. What's the word? Immortality. You will live on through her, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So what's next?
I got a bunch of stuff going on. So I'm just gonna plug in here and make sure my phone doesn't die, because that would just be the icing on the cake and all of this.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep going. And so I'll do the public hanging in August.
Mhm.
I've been working on this, like, I've been trying to make some abstract paintings. They're not really going that well. I think I'm going to start abstracting from my characters instead of trying to do sort of like surface design type of stuff. Because it's fun, but they're not really what I want them to be. Then in October, I'll be at this. I believe I'm 99% sure I'll be at the Spotted Newt Gallery at Hatch Street. And then January at Winston Gallery at Kilburn.
Right, the biggest little gallery in the city.
Yeah, and then we'll see what 2022 has to bring.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was happy to see you at the opening at Groundworks. Then I saw your work, and it was like, wow. So I'm going to go back into what you were saying about, this foothold, this connection, this obligation. Maybe that's a better word. And I suggested Moby Dick, and I seriously think that if you just use that theme, and again, not as a Greek tragedy kind of a thing, based on the visuals of your work, I think it would be phenomenal. I think it would be absolutely phenomenal because you've got that thing,
right?
I
got to read this year during the Moby Dick marathon. I got to read a chapter. The Albatross was the chapter I read. Phenomenal. I'm not a scholar when it comes to Moby Dick for sure, but I like that. And you're hearing me, and I like that you're hearing me, and you're thinking about me, and I'm so grateful for that you're putting thought into, what could help me. And it's so nice to be able to talk to you and have you really hear what I'm saying and think about it. It really is a humbling thing. So thank you for that.
I mean, one of the things that I've been trying to work with on and get going is, and I've said it for a long time, we need a cafe, a salon in the city. I've been fortunate to, because my wife is from Detroit, and I found this group called the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club. Just Google them. And it started off as two antiquarians, two antiques dealers having breakfast at their favorite restaurant and just chit-chatting. One of the founders, Henry, is a historian, art historian. He has curatorial skills. He worked for the Fords of Ford.
Right.
And then another friend joined them. And it was like one of those organic things. And then another friend and another friend, and it was up to like 80 something people.
Okay.
And Henry sort of decided that the young people coming up had no place to represent for them. And he also found that they were very naive about certain things. They wouldn't sign their name on pieces. They thought their style, was enough to carry them. And he's like, yeah, well, when you get to the level of Picasso, maybe your style will, but up until now, you better sign your on the work, right? Long story short, in 9 years' time, I think they've sold $4 million worth of artwork by gathering once a week on a Monday night It's no longer a breakfast club. It's now a dinner club, so to speak. But the point is that there's a very tight agenda. You get 2 minutes for two pieces. People walk around like the rounds girls, in the rings, the boxing rings, holding up their work. They give a description, they give a price, and you hear somebody yell sold. They ring the bell. You go off into the corner with the person that just bought your painting. You do the negotiations. It's a clean deal. It's between you and the buyer. And we really, really need that because we have so much talent. We have so many styles. I mean, we've got, the street people, we have the graphics people, we've got the painters, traditional painters.
Yeah.
We've got this phenomenal scope and array of people, but what we don't have is enough communication. And I think after Donald Wilkinson had decided that he was going to grab a bunch of people's work and slap it up on the wall at the Poor Farm, and then have this, COVID appropriate opening, towards the end of COVID, where people came out and they were just like bouncing off the walls, because we really need that. We can't work in isolation, and this kind of conversation is two-way. I hope I'm feeding your head, and at the same time you're feeding my head, and then we go off into our separate corners, and we move forward from there. What's your ultimate goal?
I'd like to finish a painting.
Why haven't you finished the painting?
Partly because I put them outside and I go back to, and then it's something new. It's part of the process. They're never quite done. I guess the ones that I've sold now are done. I could imagine maybe I would go back, but no, I mean, I in all seriousness, I'd like to just have a continued desire and skill and grow my skill and just be the best, obviously best person and husband and father, but really the best artist that I can be. I want to just keep working at it until I can't work at it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever stop for any reason. As selfish as that sounds, it's like I'm not going to stop doing this. So that's the ultimate goal, is to just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, look at Matisse, look at Monet. I mean, these guys were like, talk about handicapped, and they just kept plowing forward, and probably some of their best work. Because you know what?
Yeah.
As we get older, we start to find mental shortcuts to things. Like, why the hell did I kill myself doing this? This is so much easier. Plus, it doesn't hurt so much.
Right.
Yeah. So we find those ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So I totally lost track of time because we had to start and restart this thing because of technical difficulties.
It's terrible.
No, don't worry. No,
I started late. It's
Talk
terrible.
to Jim Charette if you want. We had 3 aborted podcasts. In fact, I got to get back to him and do one because the last one that we had was semi-successful, was a complete mess. The editor Jen was probably pulling her hair out. Wow.
This is eminently editable.
Yes.
Editable.
Editable. Yeah. It is. It's much, much more editable. All I can think of is like that Tweety Bird for some reason. Elephants. But
hopefully we can fix this.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people who are kind of like nervous now. It's like, well, what are you going to ask me in the show? I have the faintest idea. We're going to have a conversation that happens to be recorded, and it may not seem like it has value to you today, but let me tell you, your daughter, when she's older, if she's your age now, is going to go across this, and she might go, "Oh my God, I didn't know that about Dad. I never knew that Dad said this about me." Or I didn't know, that was at the point in his career where he was and he wanted to go, and that's all that this is all about. That's all that this is about.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you, because, Again, we all stand on each other's shoulders. That's for certain.
And wait, I know that you have to go, but I just want to, you're at Tiverton.
I was. That show came down, and my next show. Well, I have a show at the Whaling Museum. It's actually a showcase show. The work is in a showcase.
Cool.
It's something that the museum started in partnership with their Common Ground Mosaic project, and since the Artist Index is collaborating with them, I'm interjecting a couple of things, like we should probably have like a mini opening and maybe an artist talk, because it is local artists and it doesn't necessarily have to be about whaling. I mean, Fitzcarmel Lemaire had Gandhi and Mother Teresa up there and his New Bedford stuff. So that obviously had nothing to do with whaling. But what it is it's this sense of legitimacy that it's the Whaling Museum, but it's a museum. You know, and that's so super important.
So that's the summer.
That's going to be up until September. Yeah, and in the next room is Albert Pinkham Ryder. I couldn't have asked for a better time slot.
There you go.
And then what's coming up is going to be Steve Remick and I are having a duo show at the Dartmouth Cultural Center in Payne.
Oh yeah, okay.
I think it's July 17th to August 22nd, something like that. He's doing his COVID nurses. That's what he's showing. And I'm going to be showing my Greenwood and my Charity Ann pieces. We're both kind of excited about it and wondering, how is this all going to fit together?
Yeah.
But it's about.
Is there a curator, or are you doing that?
Jill Law is going to be curating that. Yeah.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah, she is. She is, absolutely.
She's here in Little Compton, I think, right?
No, she's in Dartmouth, but she's all over the place with her design.
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
Right.
All right, so I want to ask you. I always ask a parting question before I wrap it up, and you kind of
I'll make it quick.
No. There's no time constraint. You already kind of answered that about how you want to be remembered. So I'm going to ask you one of those other goofy questions. Then, if you had a magic wand, if you were given a magic wand and you only had one wish to fulfill, what would that wish be?
If I had a magic wand and one wish, what would that be? That's a really great question. I would have to say it has nothing to do with art. And it would be all about Lily and just that she has a healthy and happy life, and for my wife too. It's really just the three of us, and they're the most important thing to me. They're my biggest support, and I just want them. Everything I do is for their happiness. And so if I had a magic wand, I would make that happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's sort of lame, because I think I'm going to be able to do that. I hope to be able to do that without a magic wand. I don't know, but yes, it would be for them. It would be for them. Yeah.
So whatever fame, whatever success that you garner, it's something that you share, because what good is having that?
Right.
And you're fortunate to have wife and daughter in that kind of environment, which a lot of people don't have.
I know.
There's always that crazy thing too, where you get to that point where you have to make this choice between your art and your family, which thankfully I haven't had to do, but I know my mom did. She was a performer, and back in that time span, it was not possible for a woman to do both.
Yeah.
So that's a great answer. It's a great answer. All right, I want to take a deep breath and wrap it up. Hold on. Hi, this is Ron Fortier again with yet another episode of the Artist Index, brought to you by Heavenly Spirits. And we had our guest Mark Gleicher with us today. It was, as all these conversations are, stimulating and rewarding. And I learned so much. I am very blessed to be able to do this show because I really think I have a front row seat to the lives of so many talented people in this area. So that in mind, don't forget, the pandemic is not completely, totally over. So just don't be silly out there. And whatever you do it with kindness. See you later. Thanks a lot. Till the next time. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.